Have you ever considered that the divine connection you've been seeking has been within you all along? What if I told you that the greatest secret of spiritual awakening isn't found in ancient temples or sacred mountains, but in a neurological pathway that runs through your very being? This divine nerve, this sacred channel of communication between your mortal form and the eternal realm, has been known to mystics for millennia, yet systematically obscured from common knowledge. The noise of modern existence, the digital fog, the constant barrage of information, all of it designed, perhaps not by accident, to drown out the subtle vibrations of this most sacred connection. The Archons, those invisible forces of limitation, work tirelessly to dampen this signal, to keep you disconnected from your divine nature. But what if you could reactivate this channel? What if the veil between worlds is thinner than you've been led to believe, and crossing it requires not years of ascetic practice, but simply knowing where and how to direct your attention? Today, I invite you to journey beyond the boundaries of conventional spirituality into a realm where science and mysticism converge, where the physical and metaphysical are revealed not as separate domains, but as different frequencies of the same cosmic broadcast. By the end of our time together, you may never again perceive your body, mind, or spiritual essence in quite the same way. The divine nerve awaits recognition, and once awakened, it cannot be silenced again. In the secret teachings of the Gnostics, carefully preserved in the Nag Hammadi library after centuries of suppression, there exists a profound understanding of human anatomy that transcends the merely physical. These ancient texts speak of a sacred pathway, what we might now call a divine nerve, that serves as the primary conduit between our earthly consciousness and the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality that exists beyond the corrupted. Material world. This knowledge was not meant for casual consumption. It was hidden, encoded, protected, passed only to those deemed ready to comprehend its implications. The Gospel of Philip hints at this when it speaks of the bridal chamber where spirit and flesh unite. The Pistis Sophia describes channels of light that flow through the awakened initiate. Even the Gospel of Thomas alludes to this when Jesus says, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you." What these texts describe is not merely metaphorical. The ancient mystics understood something profound about human physiology that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. This divine nerve, this vagus nerve as it's clinically known today, represents the physical manifestation of our connection to higher consciousness. It is the biological infrastructure of enlightenment, the hardwired pathway through which divine signals can reach us despite the constant interference generated by the Archons. The Valentinian Gnostics called it the pneumatic channel, the pathway through which pneuma, divine breath or spirit, enters and animates the human form. They understood that this channel could be blocked, dampened, or overwhelmed by the influences of the material world, and they developed specific practices to clear, strengthen, and protect this sacred connection. If you find yourself drawn to this hidden knowledge, if something within you resonates with these ancient truths, then perhaps you are among those who are awakening in this critical moment of human evolution. This channel exists for those who remember their divine origin, for those who sense that something essential has been missing from conventional spiritual teachings. Join us on this journey of remembrance. Subscribe to this sanctuary of ancient wisdom reborn. By doing so, you are not merely following content, you're acknowledging your readiness to receive knowledge that has been carefully guarded for millennia. You're signaling to your higher self and to others on the path that you recognize the importance of this work. Each notification becomes a reminder, a small but significant disruption in the pattern of forgetting that the Archons have woven around us. Each video becomes an opportunity to strengthen that divine connection, to clear the channel through which your highest wisdom flows. In subscribing, you're not just supporting this work, you're joining a lineage of seekers that stretches back to the dawn of consciousness itself. Let this space become your sanctuary, a regular reminder of what lies beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Together, we'll explore not just ancient texts, but the living wisdom they contain. Wisdom that becomes most powerful when applied to the unique challenges of our modern age. To understand the divine nerve and its significance, we must first understand the cosmological context in which it exists. According to Gnostic tradition, our universe is not the creation of the ultimate divine source, but rather the flawed product of the demiurge, a lesser creator god born of cosmic error. This demiurge, ignorant of the true divine realm above him, fashioned the material world as a prison of sorts, a realm of limitation where human souls, divine sparks trapped in flesh, would remain ignorant of their true nature. To maintain this prison, the demiurge created servants known as Archons, cosmic administrators whose primary function is to keep humanity distracted, divided, and spiritually asleep. These Archons are not necessarily malevolent in the conventional sense. They are simply fulfilling their function within a flawed system. They are the cosmic equivalent of an immune response, working tirelessly to maintain the status quo of forgetting. The divine feminine principle, Sophia, wisdom, whose fall from the pleroma inadvertently led to the creation of the demiurge, recognized the error and has been working ever since to create pathways through which the trapped divine sparks, human souls, might remember their true nature and eventually return to the fullness of divine reality. The divine nerve represents one such pathway, a biological channel encoded into human anatomy that the Archons cannot completely sever, though they can, and do, walk constantly to disrupt its signal. In the hypothesis of the Archons, we read of how these cosmic jailers created human beings with a body from their body and a likeness from their likeness. Yet, in their arrogance, they could not prevent the divine breath from entering their creation. This divine breath, this pneuma, flows to the divine nerve, creating the potential for awakening despite the Archons' best efforts to maintain spiritual amnesia. The Apocryphon of John describes how the Archons brought Adam into the shadow of death, yet could not extinguish the divine spark within him. This spark remains connected to the pleroma through subtle channels that the Archons cannot fully comprehend or control. The divine nerve is the primary such channel, a biological feature that exists precisely because we are not merely material beings, but spiritual entities having a physical experience. When Jesus spoke of being in the world but not of the world, he was acknowledging this dual nature, the physical body governed by material laws, yet animated by a consciousness that transcends those limitations. The divine nerve is where these realms intersect, where spirit meets matter in the most literal sense. This cosmic drama is not happening in some distant realm or ancient past. It is unfolding within you at this very moment. The Archons are not merely mythological figures, but representations of forces that walk through cultural conditioning, social programming, and even the limitations of language itself to keep you disconnected from your divine nature. And the divine nerve is not just an esoteric concept, but a physical pathway through your body that can be activated, strengthened, and protected through conscious practice. What the ancient Gnostics described in mythological terms reveals itself now as profound psychological insight. The demiurge, that false creator god who fashioned the material world, can be understood as the egoic mind, the self-created identity that believes itself to be the center of existence. This I, that you normally consider yourself to be is not your true essence, but a limited construct that has forgotten its source. The Archons, though servants of the demiurge, manifest as the habitual thought patterns, societal expectations, and unconscious beliefs that maintain the ego's dominance. They are the inner voices that whisper you're not enough, the social pressures that demand conformity, the materialistic values that equate worth with possession. These forces don't exist outside you. They operate through the very neural pathways of your brain, creating a constant stream of mental static that drowns out the subtle vibrations of your divine nature. The divine nerve, this vagus nerve that modern science recognizes as central to our parasympathetic nervous system, becomes the biological foundation for what the Gnostics called gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of divine reality. When this nerve is activated, when its signal is clear, you experience states of calm awareness, compassionate connection, and intuitive understanding that transcend the ego's limited perspective. Consider how this nerve connects your brain to your heart, your gut, your lungs, all the centers of embodied wisdom that we instinctively recognize as sources of truth when we speak of following your heart or trusting a gut feeling. These are not mere metaphors, but acknowledgments of the distributed intelligence that flows through the divine nerve, connecting aspects of consciousness that the rational mind alone cannot access. The Archons work primarily by keeping this nerve in a state of constant stress and activation. The fight-or-flight response, necessary for survival in genuine emergencies, becomes chronically engaged in modern life, triggered by work deadlines, social media notifications, political outrage, and countless other stimuli that your body processes as threats. This state of persistent low-grade emergency effectively dampens the divine nerve's capacity to transmit higher frequency information. What the Gospel of Philip calls the bridal chamber, the sacred union of spirit and matter, can be understood as the state of consciousness that emerges when the divine nerve is functioning optimally, when the sympathetic, action-oriented, and parasympathetic, rest and digest systems are in perfect balance. In this state, you experience what modern psychology might call flow, or what spiritual traditions describe as presence, a condition where the artificial boundary between self and world temporarily dissolves. The true liberation, then, is not an escape from the body, but a transformation of how we inhabit it. The divine spark isn't waiting to be freed from matter, it's waiting to fully illuminate it from within. The goal is not transcendence in the sense of leaving the physical behind, but transcendence as the complete integration of spiritual awareness into every cell of your being, conducted through the divine nerve that connects all aspects of your multidimensional existence. If this understanding resonates with something deep within you, beyond intellectual curiosity, beyond the ego's collection of spiritual concepts, I invite you to acknowledge that resonance. This recognition isn't about agreeing with ideas, but about feeling a truth that your body already knows. When you engage with this wisdom, when you press that like button, you're not merely expressing approval, you're participating in an act of cosmic significance. Each such acknowledgement creates a ripple in the collective field of consciousness, a small but meaningful disruption in the archonic patterns that maintain spiritual amnesia. Think of it as a declaration to the universe: I remember, I recognize this truth not as new information, but as a reminder of what I have always known. Such declarations matter. They strengthen not only your own divine connection, but contribute to the awakening of others who may be on the verge of similar recognition. The Gnostics understood that awakening is both deeply personal and inherently collective. The Archons maintain their influence precisely by keeping us isolated in the illusion of separation. Each time we recognize and affirm our connection to higher truth, we weaken that illusion not just for ourselves, but for all beings. So if this teaching activates something within you, if you feel that subtle internal yes that comes not from the mind, but from a deeper place of knowing, honor that response. Let your engagement become a conscious act of remembrance, a small but significant step in reclaiming your divine heritage. And know that in doing so, you join countless others across time and space who have similarly recognized the spark within themselves. This community of the awakening has always existed, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, but always present as a counterforce to archonic forgetting. How does this ancient wisdom apply to your daily life? Consider for a moment the state of your nervous system as you move through a typical day. From the moment you wake to the blue light of your phone screen, through the caffeine-fueled rush of morning preparation, into the stress of commuting, working, managing relationships, consuming news, and endlessly scrolling through social media, your divine nerve is under constant assault. Each notification, each headline, each unresolved conflict triggers small bursts of stress hormones. Your body remains in a subtle but persistent state of fight or flight, never fully relaxing into the parasympathetic mode where healing, regeneration, and spiritual connection naturally occur. This is not accidental. The archonic forces of our age have evolved sophisticated methods to keep your divine nerve dampened, your attention fragmented, your energy depleted. Have you noticed how difficult it has become to simply sit in silence? How uncomfortable it feels to be alone with your thoughts without reaching for distraction? How rare it is to experience moments of genuine awe, wonder, or transcendent connection? These are symptoms of a divine nerve under siege. Yet, within this challenge lies profound opportunity. By becoming conscious of these influences, you gain the power to counteract them. Simple practices, conscious breathing, moments of deliberate stillness, digital fasting, communion with nature, take on revolutionary significance when understood as acts of resistance against archonic interference. When you take 3 deep breaths before responding to a triggering situation, you're not just calming yourself, you're activating your divine nerve, clearing the channel between your embodied consciousness and your higher awareness. When you sit in meditation, even for 5 minutes, you're not just reducing stress, you're strengthening your immunity to archonic static, tuning your internal receiver to detect finer frequencies of truth. Consider how often you make decisions from a state of fear, scarcity, or separation, all symptoms of a divine nerve functioning below its optimal capacity. How might your choices differ if made from a state of calm centeredness, from that place where your individual awareness touches the infinite? This is not abstract philosophy, but practical wisdom with immediate implications for how you navigate relationships, work, health, and every other aspect of embodied existence. The Archons maintain their influence primarily through unconsciousness, through your forgetting to remember who you truly are. Each moment of remembering, each conscious activation of your divine nerve creates a crack in their matrix of control. This is why present moment awareness has been at the heart of every authentic spiritual tradition throughout history. Now is where your power lies. Now is where the divine nerve functions. Now is where archonic interference can be recognized and released. What we've explored together, the divine nerve, archonic interference, the practices of remembrance, reveals a profound integration of ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding. This isn't about replacing science with mythology or reason with faith, but recognizing that these apparent opposites are complementary aspects of a more complete comprehension. The vagus nerve that modern neuroscience studies and the divine channel that the Gnostics revered are not separate realities, but different perspectives on the same phenomenon, like describing water as H2O or as the sacred element of life and purification. Both descriptions hold truth, together offer a more complete picture. When you activate your divine nerve through conscious breathing, through heart-centered awareness, through moments of genuine connection with others, you're not just altering your neurochemistry, though you are certainly doing that. You're also tuning into frequencies of consciousness that transcend the merely physical, accessing wisdom that flows from beyond the limited self that the Archons work so diligently to convince you is all that you are. This integration reveals itself in the very experience of being human. We are neither purely spiritual beings temporarily inconvenienced by physical form, nor merely complex biological machines generating the illusion of consciousness. We are the living intersection of spirit and matter, of infinity and limitation, of being and becoming. And the divine nerve is where these apparent opposites meet and reconcile. The practices that strengthen this connection are simultaneously biological and spiritual. When you engage in heart-centered meditation, you're literally improving vagal tone and heart rate variability while also opening to divine love. When you practice forgiveness, you're reducing inflammatory markers in your bloodstream while also liberating your soul from karmic patterns. The physical and metaphysical are not separate domains, but different octaves of the same cosmic symphony. Perhaps the greatest revelation in all of this is that awakening doesn't require you to abandon your humanity or transcend your body. Rather, it invites you to fully inhabit your embodied existence, to experience the sacred not as something distant and separate, but as the very essence of your being, expressing itself to form. The divine nerve doesn't connect you to something outside yourself. It reveals that the divine and the human were never truly separate to begin with. Perhaps we've had it backward all along. What if the greatest spiritual illusion isn't attachment to the physical world, but the belief that spirit and matter are separate in the first place? What if the divine nerve, the sacred channel that the Archons work so diligently to disrupt, is actually revealing that the division between human and divine was always artificial, always a product of limited perception rather than ultimate reality? The Gnostic Jesus didn't teach escape from the world, but transformation of how we perceive and inhabit it. When he said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he wasn't speaking metaphorically, but pointing to the literal truth that divine consciousness flows through your very cells, transmitted along pathways that include but transcend the physical, with the divine nerve serving as a primary conduit. The Archons maintain their influence not through superior power, but through the persistence of a grand forgetting, a forgetting that you have now begun to overcome, simply by recognizing the divine nerve's existence and significance. This recognition itself is an act of remembrance, a reclaiming of knowledge that has always been yours but was temporarily obscured by the noise and distraction of a world that benefits from your spiritual amnesia. As you move forward from this moment, carry with you the awareness that every conscious breath, every moment of present attention, every act of genuine compassion activates this divine channel. The practices themselves are simple. The consistency of remembering to practice is what the Archons work most diligently to disrupt. Yet, even this disruption can serve awakening once recognized, for it reveals exactly where your work lies. The signal is already broadcasting. The divine nerve already exists within you. The connection to your highest wisdom was never truly broken. It was only forgotten. And what has been forgotten can be remembered. What has been dampened can be amplified. What has been obscured can be revealed. The journey before you isn't about becoming something you're not, but remembering something you've always been. The divine nerve awaits your conscious attention, not to create connection, but to recognize what has always been there, humming beneath the surface of ordinary awareness, waiting for you to finally listen. Has something stirred within you as we've explored this ancient yet immediate wisdom? I invite you to sit with whatever you're feeling right now, not analyzing it intellectually, but experiencing it directly. This feeling itself may be your divine nerve responding to recognition, awakening to the attention you're finally giving it. Share a single word in the comments that captures what this awakening feels like within you. Perhaps it's remembrance, homecoming, clarity, or something entirely personal to your experience. In sharing this word, you not only mark your own journey, but create a beacon for others who may be experiencing similar stirrings of divine recognition. Let your word become a thread in the tapestry of collective awakening, a small but significant contribution to the great remembering that is unfolding across our world in this pivotal moment of human evolution.